Hey friend, do you feel like you could be managing your business finances better either as an independent hairstylist or a salon owner, but you don't know where to start? If so, this video is for you. I'm gonna share my top 5 tips for managing your business finances as a hairstylist like a boss. Number 1 is to open a business bank account. I talked about this a little bit in my last video called the number 1 mistake that hairstylists make with their money. So if you haven't watched that yet, definitely go check it out. But basically the first thing that you want to do when you're trying to manage your money is to keep your business finances and your personal finances separate. And the best way to do that is to open up a business bank account. Now, this doesn't mean that it has to be a business account, as in you're opening up under an LLC or your S Corp or anything like that. You can simply just open up a separate bank account. The whole goal is to have another bank account that all of your income from your clients or product sales is going to, and only to that account. And then any expenses or money that you spend or pay yourself with should be coming from that account as well. Number 2 is to track every dollar that you spend. Now, the cool part here is that once you do the step that we just talked about, number 1, which is open that business bank account, this should pretty much already be happening by default. Here's the key though, is that you have to be very diligent about making sure that all expenses or money that you're pulling out is going to and from that business bank account. So not only is your point of sale system, I'm gonna use Square for example, because that's what I use, not only should that be connected to that account, so by default, things are automatically depositing into that business bank account, right? Like, not only that, but like, you gotta think about all the cash payments that you might be receiving as well. Even if it's not a ton of cash payments, that still needs to be tracked as part of your business income because it is business income, right? And this also means tips and gratuity. Now, that's a whole nother conversation. Whether or not you decide to report that income is up to you. I do choose to report all my gratuity and my tip income because I'm trying to show that I make as much money as possible so that I can make bigger investments, right? I want to show all the money that's coming in and that I'm making so that I can continue to scale and grow my business. Personally, I have 2 days a month that I deposit my funds, the 10th and 25th, which is the same days that I choose to pay myself, which we'll talk about in another tip here shortly. But basically, it can't just be all those debit and credit card transactions that you're tracking, right? It truly does need to be any business expenses or business related purchases that you make as well. The last thing that you want to be doing is making a purchase from your personal checking account. Instead, we really want to get in the habit of making sure that all expenses, all of them, so even that continuing education class that you've just bought or any of those random Amazon.com purchases that you're making for the salon, literally everything should be coming from either your business debit card or your business credit card, one of those two. Number 3, fall in love with budgeting and spreadsheets. Now, I know some of you are going to be rolling your eyes at this and be like, here she goes, the boring stuff, right? But I know where you're coming from. I used to hate budgeting and I used to hate spreadsheets as well. But here's the thing. I think I hated them because budgeting to me was kind of like dieting. It seems super promising in the beginning and you're like, I'm gonna follow this perfectly down to a T. But then after a few weeks, you're back to your old habits because it just was not sustainable. And not only was it not sustainable, whether we're talking about budgeting or diets, is that I didn't go into it with realistic expectations. What changed though was that I finally found a way to budget in a way that worked for me, that I could do long term, and that was actually kind of fun. I know, crazy, right? I stopped trying to force myself to use software systems that I did not like and that didn't feel doable long term. I think the biggest realization that I had though was that budgeting is not meant to be this act of creating a list of expenses that you follow perfectly down to a T. That's nearly impossible to do. Instead, the goal of budgeting should be to know what you're spending your money on, how much money you're spending, and to know the general amount of money needed to pay those business operating expenses every single month with ease. Number 4, determine your paydays. What a lot of independent hairdressers do, and no shame because typically we were never told to do anything otherwise, is that they spend the money that they make behind the chair whenever they need it. Usually because it's in the same exact account as all of our personal money. Stylists usually aren't taking the time to differentiate, okay, I made X amount of money this month, therefore I'm gonna bring X amount of money home, and take the time time to transfer it into my personal banking account. But ideally, that's what you would do. And although that's not the norm, we're not trying to be the norm, right? We're trying to be a successful hairdresser who manages our money like a boss. So after everything is separated, then you want to determine, okay, when are my paydays going to be? So again, for me, it's the 10th and 25th of every month. Then after you determine your paydays, you also want to determine what your paychecks are going to be, right? You should know ahead of time before you bring any money in that month what your general goal is to hit, right? How much income overall do you need to be bringing in? And then how much money do you anticipate transferring to your own independent personal bank account? In terms of deciding the paydays that you want to pay yourself on, when I was an employed hairdresser for a decade, I always got paid bi-weekly. And so when I switched to becoming an independent contractor, I knew I wanted to stay around that time frame. And for me, the 10th and 25th work beautifully because it gives me the same feel as being paid bi-weekly, but honestly, it's much easier to keep track of and to run my business that way rather than trying to implement it bi-weekly. Number 5 is to know all of your operating expenses and to evaluate them monthly. Again, by operating expenses, I literally mean every single expense that is associated with your business. And if you have that business budget rocking, then this step should be pretty easy. If you don't yet have a list of all your operating expenses, the first thing that I would recommend doing is writing out all of your reoccurring monthly expenses. So by reoccurring monthly expenses, I'm talking your chair rent, any subscriptions that you have for software, the hair color purchases that you're making, any monthly expense. The other type of expenses that you don't want to forget about are the infrequent or unexpected expenses. So by infrequent, I mean your annual amount that you pay for maybe your insurance or your website and domain name, right? Or even your cosmetology licensing fees. I pay those, I think, every year or every 2 years, right? So you have these expenses that you want to be mindful of that even though they're not occurring every month, they are going to occur maybe every quarter, every 6 months, every year. You know those are going to happen, so write those down as well. And then lastly, the unexpected expenses. These are what we think unexpected. They could be things like, hey, your blow dryer stops working, right? Now we got to spend $100, $200, $300 on a new blow dryer or any other tool that maybe stops working. All of these expenses, both the monthly, the infrequent, and the unexpected, you want to record and be mindful of. Okay, so let's recap on these 5 tips. All right. Number 1 is to open a business bank account. Number 2, track every dollar. Number 3, fall in love with budgeting and spreadsheets. Number 4, determine your paydays. And lastly, number 5, know all of your operating expenses and continually evaluate them. If you find yourself wanting more support when it comes to managing your business finances, maybe getting your account set up, your budget set up, learning how to allocate different amounts of money for your taxes, your expenses, what to bring home every month, all of it, then don't worry, my friend. I've created a whole program just for you called Mindful Money Management, and it is a step-by-step system that helps hairdressers learn how to manage their business finances with ease. Now, my question for you is, are you already implementing any of these tips within your business finances? Or are you finding any of these things difficult to implement? If so, let me know in the comments below and I would love to help you out. If you found this video helpful, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and I will see you again next week.